Shadows over Hawthorne. Episode 4. Echoes of the Past. Previously in Shadows over Hawthorne, Detective Elliot Graves uncovered another murder. A man left hanging under a gaslight pole, his body carved with ritualistic symbols and clutching a red silk ribbon. A mysterious figure led Elliot to an old, rune-marked box buried in old Greaves wood. Inside, a journal belonging to the Order of the Black Veil hinted at secrets that could unravel the darkness consuming Hawthorne. The Forgotten Journal. Elliot sat in the flickering light of his flat, the journal resting on his desk. The leather was cracked, the pages stiff with age. Each turn of the fragile paper revealed meticulous entries, accounts of rituals, symbols, and cryptic references to the Veiled One. The writing shifted halfway through. A new hand took over, more frenzied, describing failed rituals and rising tensions within the order. The final entry chilled Elliot to the bone. The Veiled One grows restless. It marks one among us. The blood must continue, or we are all condemned. The reluctant ally. At the Historical Society, Abigail Thatcher studied the journal with wide, terrified eyes. She traced one of the symbols with her finger, her voice shaking. This wasn't just a cult, Elliot. This was a covenant. The families that founded Hawthorne, they weren't just settlers. They were followers. Elliot frowned. What does that mean? That they believed in this Veiled One? It's more than belief, Abigail whispered. It's blood. They claimed it gave them power, wealth, protection. But that comes with a cost, doesn't it? The blood never stops. Elliot clenched his jaw. And now someone's trying to pick up where they left off. A familiar clue. Abigail pointed to the map. This journal mentions 4 key sites: the chapel ruins, the well, the town square, and this. Her finger rested on a small, unmarked patch of land on the outskirts of Hawthorne. The House of the Veil. An old estate burned down decades ago. Elliot stared at the map, memories surfacing unbidden. That estate, he murmured. That's where I proposed to her. The burned estate. Elliot arrived at the estate at dusk. The ruins were overgrown with ivy, the charred remnants of the house barely standing. His lantern cast long shadows as he stepped cautiously through the wreckage. Among the rubble, he found a staircase leading downward. At the bottom, a damp cellar waited. Symbols were etched into the stone walls, faint but unmistakable. In the center of the room lay an altar, its surface cracked and blackened. Scattered around it were fragments of red silk ribbons. As Elliot approached, his lantern flickered. The murmuring began again, louder this time. "Show yourself!" he barked, revolver drawn. The shadows shifted. From the corner of the room, the figure emerged. Closer now, Elliot could make out more details. A hooded figure, their face obscured, and that same glowing rune hanging from their neck. "Why are you doing this?" Elliot demanded. "What do you want?" The figure tilted its head before pointing to the altar. On its surface, a name had been carved deep into the stone. Elliot's breath caught. It was her name, his fiancée's name. Visions of the past. The moment Elliot touched the altar, the world seemed to shift. His vision blurred, the cellar dissolving into darkness. When it cleared, he was standing in the same room, but it was no longer in ruins. Candles burned brightly, illuminating robed figures gathered around the altar. Their chanting filled the air, their hands raised in supplication. At the center of it all was a woman, Elliot's fiancée. Her eyes wide with terror, her wrists bound, her screams muffled by a red silk ribbon tied around her mouth. "No," Elliot whispered, his voice trembling. The chanting grew louder, a dagger gleamed, raised high. Elliot shouted, lunging forward, but his hands passed through the figures like smoke. He could only watch as the dagger plunged downward, back to reality. Elliot snapped back to the present, gasping for air. He was on his knees, his hand still on the altar. The hooded figure was gone, the murmuring silenced. He stumbled back, his mind reeling. They had killed her here. The order, the ritual, the veiled one. But why? Elliot's trembling hands reached into his coat, pulling out the journal. He flipped through the pages, searching desperately for answers. And then he found it. The veiled one marks those who threaten its will. The blood of the marked is the key to its power. His fiancée hadn't been random. She'd been marked. And now, so was he. Cliffhanger Elliot staggered out of the ruins. As he reached his car, he froze. Tied to the driver's side mirror was another red silk ribbon, fresh and pristine, fluttering in the cold wind. Carved into the side of the car, in jagged, uneven letters, was a single word: leave. To be continued.